This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with today's video, making a hand-stitched pineapple block. The pineapple block is a variation of the log cabin block. It dates all the way back to colonial times in the 1800s, and it had to do with hospitality and warmth. It takes twice as many pieces to complete this pillow when compared to the log cabin, and it'll take a little longer to piece. But it can be done with paper piecing, can be sewn on the machine, or what I like to do is do it by hand. And traditionally, when you finish this and want to put it into a quilt, it does not have any sashing. I've always liked the yellows and blues together. It makes such a pretty pillow. And I said, well, I'm going to branch out this time and make it a little different. And what you start with is you have a center block, which is a 3.5-inch square. And in this case, I took a green. And if I was going to make a quilt, then that would be what the center was for all of my blocks. And then you'd need your yellow sections. You're going to need 4 2-inch squares. That's going to be your first row that goes around. And then you're going to need 16 2.5-inch squares. For your prep work, you're going to want to take both of your sets of squares, those yellow squares, and draw a diagonal line on each one of those. One suggestion that I saw was if the material wants to slide, and it will, then you could set it on a piece of sandpaper and that would hold it as you drew your lines. I also found that a lead pencil works better than a mechanical pencil. It flows across the material. Then the other thing is to start cutting a variety of light, medium, and dark fabrics. And they're going to be 1.5 or 1.5-inch wide strips. So for this one, I just went and cut a variety of those. When you get ready to start on your squares, there are the lengths of the material that you're going to use. And there's two ways that you can do this. You can build your center square, which with your green and your first set of yellows. And then you can add strips as you go, pick the color you want and cut it off. Or to make it so that you have a little more chance of it being a square, more squarish, you can actually cut the lengths of what the sides would be. And I took and actually made myself some little templates because I started thinking, well, maybe when I got ready to do it, then I could just grab one of those to cut the length of the material that I wanted. But on the list at the bottom, it will tell you how many to cut, if that will help, if you'd like to do it that way. But you need to realize that you need long strips too, because the outside edge, the last one, it will actually be 11.5 inches long. So I'm going to get ready to start. I have my 3.5-inch center. Oops, sorry. I have the yellows that are going to go around that. Then I have my 2 short strips, and then the next size that would go. All right, now we're over here at the work area. And I've got my needle, I've got it threaded with black thread so that you can see it. And if it's your scrap thread, you can use that also, leftover thread that you want to use. And I want to take my 3.5, and I'm going to have it at the bottom. I'm going to take the right side of the yellow and put it against this one. And I'm going to get ready to start. And for this one, you can start right at the edge. And I'd use a sharp needle. And then look and make sure that you've got it going back to the back. And this is kind of a big needle for me, the way I'm sitting here doing this. But you'd want them to be the nice stitches, and they go up and down. And I'm going to go all the way across. I'm going to use the table to hold it in place. so that I can go up and down. And when I get to the end of that, I'm gonna just go through it a couple of times, and that usually holds pretty good. All right, I'm gonna cut that one off. Well, caught. Okay. All right, now what I want to do is I want to take my scissors and I'm going to cut off so that I have about 1/4 of an inch left. And we're going to have the first corner, and I'm going to open it up. That looks pretty good. Now on this part, I usually like to take and open them up. And as you build each one, you'll get a way of doing it where you want some of them to lay flat and some of them to do the other. It has to do too with whether you're going to quilt this when you get finished, because the pillow that I showed you wasn't quilted on the top, and it doesn't really need any. But if you wanted to and you were going to do like stitch in the ditch or something, then you want to sort of pay attention to where the bulk is, especially if you're going to hand stitch. So that took care of one. Now I'm going to take my next one. I keep that folded back, and usually they tell you do the opposite corners. And so we'd start with an opposite corner again, and we're going to do the same thing. Now I've added the second corner the same way, and I've trimmed it off, and then I'm going to open it up, and now we have 2 of those on there. So I'm going to go ahead and add the next one. And you can see that it falls over on the others. And I've got my needle threaded and knotted, and I'm going to start again. And I'm trying to leave the camera on so that it won't cut off and I have to start over again. So just be patient with me as I go across here. You can see that nice sharp needle makes a nice difference. And if you had a long needle, you might be able to get, that's 4 right there. That's pretty good. And go across here. And we're going to see, because where the traditional log cabin has got the square in the middle and you just go around the outsides, you'll see all of a sudden that we're making it so that the square is on its side, more like a diamond shape. And so now you know by now what I want to do is take sharp scissors and cut this one off. And I'm just going to leave it for right now and get the other one on. And this actually was a nice one to have as a carry-along. But then I saw another hint this week that a lady took. I don't know if you ever have any extra silver trays around. I don't, but she actually took 2 silver trays, one for light colors and one for dark colors. And she labeled the sections with the lengths of the fabrics and put those in there. Now, you wouldn't be able to hardly carry that with you unless you carried a box. But this would be a good carry with you because you could cut the strips as you went and not have to worry about it. Because the order of your color strips are not going to matter. See, I always try to have a good tool. You can see I'm not with that one. All right, and we'll do this, and we'll finally, then you get to see this neat. There's some stitches showing, and there's going to be my back, and I might leave 2 open and then just do the other. But you can just press it with your fingers, and that's what I did when I was making the other one that I was working on, which was, this is the other one that you had seen. So far we have the center block, and we have these 4 around here. And then it's going to start doing like the traditional log cabin. And you're going to start adding the strips around the outside. And once those strips are added, you have your 16-inch blocks, and they're going to go out there. Now, you want to do the two short sides opposite each other. So I already pre-cut two short pieces. And there again, remember, the only reason I pre-cut was so that it would help me to keep my square, keep it in square, and it did a pretty good job doing it that way. Now, with this straight one, there's one thing that I did is, as they get longer, you'll want to pin them in place, and so this one I'm just going to pin right here. But when you look underneath, you're going to see, and you'll get where you can feel it, but you can see where the two yellows cross. That's where you want to be when you come through there, so that you'll have a good chance at a nice point right there. So I've got that set, and I'm just going to start, and again, I'm going to stitch across, and I'm going to do this side, and then I'm going to go over to the other side and do its opposite. Sometimes you get a little knot there. The closer I get, I'm trying to aim for that spot. And I was going to leave that little knot there for right now. If I was doing it, I could hold it a little differently, then I would get it out of there, but let's go across. You can see there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of nice practice with your hand stitching. Open it up, and see, that's pretty square. That's going to fit pretty well, and that's pretty good there, because you're going to have a lot of points all the way around. Then you're going to go over, and you're going to do the other one. Set it on there, pin it down, find your little place there, and keep going. All right, so I'm going to go back to this one. So we'd put in the two opposite, and then we'd come in and we'd put the other two that were the opposite. Then take your other block, and you had already drawn your lines on it. You're going to set it on here, on the corner. You're going to stitch it, trim it off, fold it back, and you'll have it right here. And then at this point, I just took a hot iron and pressed it to see how I was doing, that it was laying still. And then I'd continue, and on the paper, the previous, it tells you how much to measure those for if you want to measure them as you go. But you can actually just take and lay a piece on here and cut it, and make sure you notice that these do not meet. So don't think you've done something wrong. So go back to the first pillow that I showed you, and you can see the center box. You can see the smaller squares going around the outside, and then you can see the pieces on the outside. This is actually the first round, is that part going around the outside. And then there's your first big triangles, okay? And then what I do for my pillows is to make them nice before I stuff them. You may have a foam or something you want to put inside, but what I learned makes it really nice is this. I didn't quilt this top, but I did put a piece of batting inside that, and then I put a piece of scrap fabric behind it. And even when you put your foam in there or your polyester, whatever you want to polyfill to fill it with, it just makes it more luxurious feeling. And then you can have some fun with your back because you can put any of your fabrics on there. And this one I happen to do stars with a sewing machine. But in the past I also hand stitched those when I got to those. So I'm going to take and show you one more time the lengths of the strips. And everybody comes up with their own way for doing things, but that's the basic idea for doing a pineapple block. And if you go online, there are a lot of creative ways, things that you can do with it. But this one, with the yellow always in it, you really get a feeling for the pineapple pattern. I hope you enjoy this and learn something about doing some hand stitching. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching.